Topic 2 now is solving systems using algebra now. So there's two ways we can solve. We can solve through substitution, or we can solve through elimination. Okay, with substitution, we just look at one of the systems and we want to isolate y. We want to get y by itself. Now don't try and go isolating x's because you'll run into a problem because there's an x and there's an x squares in a lot of situations. So remember, focus and isolate y when you do substitution. So we look at this top system and there's my y, so I'm just going to move that y over to that side, and there we go. I isolated the y. Now all I need to do is substitute this 5x minus 10 into the y of this other system. So that y right there now becomes that. So now it's just doing some math. So we have x squared plus x, and this times this is minus 10x, and that times that is minus 20. Oh, pardon me, positive 20. Because a negative times a negative. Okay, then we just collect these like terms, and that's how we get that. Now we can factor, or you can use your quad program depending if you feel you want to use technology or you want to use your brain. So we have x plus 4, x minus 5, and then we get its roots. So remember, these are just your x's. So I often see people on the test go, that. They think that's the answer, 4, 5. No. Those are just your x's. We haven't solved the y's yet. So to get the y's, what you need to do now is take that isolated y equals 5x minus 10 and substitute that into there to get its y value. So we go 5 times 4 minus 10. So what does that get us? That gets us 20 minus 10, so that's 10. So now your answer, let's just rub this out, your answer is 4, 10. Okay, now we do the same thing. We are going to substitute the 5 into there, so that becomes 5 now. So 5 times 5 is 25. 25 minus 10 is 15. So the other answer is 5, 15. All right. Now, when you do elimination, you have to call one system 1, the other system 2. Now, we want to eliminate the y because we want to just be left with the x's so we can solve. So I want to multiply the first system, this one right here, by negative 2. Why? Because if I multiply by negative 2, that y becomes positive 2y. And then a positive 2y and a negative 2y, so this and this, will eliminate. That's what I want to do. Okay, so if I multiply, I have to multiply the whole system. So I multiply all that by negative 2, and that's what it becomes. So I call that my system 3 now. So now I'm going to add system 3 to system 2 to eliminate that y term. So remember, you have to add in 0 for missing terms. So it's important because it makes things line up. So if you notice this third system, the new one I created right here, it did have an x squared, so I have a 0 x squared. There is no x squared, so I just added in. This lines up with this, this lines up with this, this lines up with this. Now, we add. So 0 plus 1 is 1. That's 1x squared. Negative 10 plus that is negative 9. And over here we have negative 20 plus 0 is that. And then move this over. And there's that quadratic we just saw. And then factor. Okay, let's try this one. So generally you got your own method you want to use. You can use elimination, you can use substitution, but I always try and find the easiest way out. In this case, I would use substitution because I have that variable right there by itself. So I'll go y equals, move that over, so it's minus 3x minus 9. So now I've isolated the y. So now it's substitution time, so I take this and I go look for the y and I put it there. Now I'm going to show you a way I like because it's good for checking algebraically. I put them both into y equals. So I look at this system right here and let's get it into y equals. So y equals, so there's my y, so this flies over and this flies over. So it's negative 4x squared plus x minus 9. So I line y equals with y equals if I can, because if I want to check with my calculator, this becomes y1, this becomes y2. I type it into my calculator and I get my intersection points. Okay, so this now is going to go right into there. So I get negative 3x minus equals negative 4x squared plus x minus 9. So now it's just doing some algebra, moving things around to try and solve this. So I'm going to look for my quadratic term. So this I'm going to move over and over and over. I like to be positive, you don't have to be. So that becomes that. This becomes a negative x, so that becomes minus 4x. And this comes over, becomes a plus 9, so that's 0. So now we factor. So I see a 4x, that's common in both terms, so that's x minus 1. And then remember from before, when you have an x outside, that's a 0. And the opposite of that is 1. Remember, these are just your x's. Now let's go find the y's. Well, we know how to find the y's. We can just take this and substitute it into there. So we get negative 3, 0, minus 9. So we get minus 9. So there's my y. Okay, so one answer. So this is my answer box. Okay, this is the answer. So I have 0, comma, negative 9. So there's one answer. Okay, so now let's substitute this into there as well. So negative 3 times 1 minus 9, so that's negative 3 minus 9, that's negative 12. So there's my other one. So now I know when x is 1, y is minus 12. So I have my answer. Okay, so now we're going to use a situation where we have to put it into a word problem into some systems so we can solve this. All right, so let's see, we have two integers such that the sum of the smaller number and twice the larger is 46. Also, when you square the smaller, it is decreased by 3 times the larger, which result is 93. So I always do a let statement. Let S represent the smaller, let L represent the larger. So we know what those letters mean. So in the first statement, the smaller, so S, and so that's plus, twice the larger, so that's the 2 L is 46. So is means equals. Okay, in our second statement, the square of the smaller, so that's S squared, is decreased, so that means minus, by 3 times the larger result, which means equals 93. So there are my two systems. All right, so we got my two systems. Now it's time to solve it. So in this case, I used elimination because when I'm dealing with these L's, because remember these are your Y's, pretty hard to get it by itself because you're going to have a fraction. So by doing elimination, it's an easier way of solving. So what I do is I have a 2 and a 3. So I'm trying to find the lowest common denominator, which is 6. So what do I need to multiply 2 by to get to 6? So I have a 3 there. Okay, so I multiply both sides by 3. All right, then that gets me down to here. So I just multiplied it in. Okay, in the second system, I have a 3 there, so I have to multiply by 2. So I put a 2 there and a 2 there, and I multiply it out and I get that. All right, now it's time to add the 2 together. Remember to put your zeros in, things that are missing, so everything lines up. So this is a 0 s squared, remember that? So now we're going to add them up. So that gets us 2, that gets us 3, and now, the line should be there. This eliminates, that's where we're doing it, and these add up to that. Okay, so there we go. Now let's just move that over. Okay, because it's pretty big numbers, let's just use our quad program on our calculator. And these two numbers pop out. And we have to have integers. That's a key word. So we know negative 13.5 is not an integer. So our answer is 12. Now I substitute the 12 into one of those systems. Doesn't really matter. So I substitute it in system 1. I put the 12 there. And I did my algebra. And I got that. So there is the solution. Okay, so you can try this one on your own and see how you do. Okay, example 3 is solving quadratic and quadratic equations. So now you're dealing with no linear. So with the first situation here, first example, you can do it by elimination because I could do it by substitution, but when I see the y and the y, all I have to do is multiply one of them by negative 1. So if I multiply that first one by negative 1, it changes this to a negative, this to a positive, this to a positive, and this to move it over to a negative. And why I did that, because now I have a positive y and a negative y. I create elimination right off the bat, so it makes life a little easier. Then I get down to here, because I add these to get there, and these get to there. All right, and then I move that over, so I get 3x squared plus 5x minus 2 equals 0. Okay, so let's type it into the quad program. And I get negative 2 1/3. Now I substitute these into any of the functions. I picked 1. So I get 12 and I substitute there, and I get negative 2 there. So my solutions are as follows.